What is up, everybody? Welcome to the May Tidal Gardens live stream. So, like normal, we are doing a little test for the next 10 minutes. Make sure that there's no major audio or video issues. Last time we did this, there was like some audio stuff. So, hopefully, on launch, this is clean. Hopefully. I am sure chat will let me know. There's about a 30-second delay. So I get to talk to myself here, and hopefully you guys aren't hearing like triple voice echo stuff. Anyway, looks like there's quite a few people in chat already. Very nice to see everybody. Thanks for deciding to spend your weekend with me rather than enjoying the very nice weather that's outside. Here in Ohio, it is like 80 degrees and clear skies sunny. So it is asking a lot for many of you that have suffered through the Ohio winter. Is this a new shirt? Actually, this is a new shirt. So I've been dabbling a little bit trying to find better shirts to make Tidal Gardens staff t-shirts and stuff. Because and I guess we still have shirts available for sale through Teespring. I think it's called Spring now. And that's one of those like print to order type arrangements. So people can place orders online. It takes like a month and a half for people to actually get their stuff. And the quality, you can kind of like choose between different brands of shirts and stuff for the different prints, but the quality of the shirts is never that good, and they kind of just like fall apart, like they just disintegrate. So I was like, that's not a great product to have your company stuff on. And so for like literally the last 2 years, I haven't made any company t-shirts, not even for my staff. What's funny is my staff wears t-shirts from other companies. Like we love getting free t-shirts from other folks. So whether they be like channel sponsors or just anybody. So for example, like today we got some t-shirts from MRC. And I am sure the staff is going to just fight over them because there's only 3 of them. We get shirts from like Ceche and like Eye Catching Corals, which is a wholesaler nearby. Like so, my staff almost exclusively wears T-shirts from other companies, Abiz, like whatever. So I was like, at some point I should probably spend some money and actually get some T-shirts for the staff. And maybe one day offer them for sale. But I wanted a higher quality t-shirt. That gets me back to this company. So obviously not sponsored. So meaning me, I was going on the rabbit hole of t-shirt brands. And I watched all these YouTube reviews about like certain brands that and they keep on coming up a lot. Like, is it like True something or the other and New Age t-shirts, stuff like that. But they were cut above. And so I gave those a try, and they're all very nice. Way better quality than what I'm used to. But then one channel did a review of a company called American Giant. And they were basically comparing that company to like some of these other ones that were like the highly rated ones on YouTube. And those t-shirts, the ones that I liked, that I had tried on for like a good month, ran them through the washer about like a dozen times. They were very comfortable. They held up, didn't shrink. But he was saying like, yeah, those are kind of basic, fairly low quality t-shirts still. I'm like, interesting, because those are the best ones I've ever seen. But this company, American Giant, was interesting because this is what he actually liked. And they have like an interesting story because they are 100% made in America, and they're made from cotton farmed in America. And they have this big whole thing about like their employees are paid like living wages with benefits. And that is obviously reflected in the price of the product. So they're expensive shirts, like legit expensive. But professional curiosity, I wanted to see how much better it really was than the stuff that I liked from some of these other places that are probably made in Asia. And it is noticeably better in the sense that the thickness of the material really stands out. And that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of not to try just their t-shirts, but for other things like a button-down t-shirt. So this button-down t-shirt feels like a suit when you're like a suit jacket when you're putting it on. Um, it's like I would say it's about double or triple the weight of like what you would expect a shirt to be. You just like lift it up and you're just like, dang, like why is it so heavy, you know? So anyway, that's the story behind this shirt. What's up, Mom? What you want?
Let me give you this.
Hmm. Spam email or spam snail mail. Great. Anyway, so that's the story of the shirt. I'm still doing tryouts for shirts. So anyway, guys, what is up? I'll say hi to the folks in chat in just a minute, but before I get into that, I wanted to quickly go over the thank yous for the different sponsors. So we've got one corporate sponsor. It is Polyp Lab. So thank you very much, Phil from Polyp Lab, for supporting the Tidal Gardens channel. Let's say the thank yous to the Patreon crowd. Thank you, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Brandy Camp, Be the Fountain in chat, Chuck Admire, Greg Zimmerman, Harkins Aquatics, ICP Test Hub, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, who I saw this past weekend in Dallas at Aquashella. More on that later. Lynn Holt, Miss Mandy, Puddle Aquatics, Ryan Baker, Scott Williams, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. And on the YouTube member side, Mark Baumgartner, William Heitz. I think that William told me how to pronounce his name on the last stream. Hopefully I got that right because I don't actually remember the pronunciation. Carlos Fernandez, Steven13, Mike Downey, Keith Holland, Terry Kuhn, Herb777, Justin Harden, and Ohio Ventures. Okie doke. We are getting close to the coral selling portion of the show. We've got about 250-ish, maybe a little bit less, some odd corals to go over. It will take us all the way to about 4 p.m. So hopefully in that time, we can go over some audience questions and talk all things Reef Aquarium. Okay. So Matt Smoyer, yes, I'm going to be going to Charlotte for the Aquatic Expo. Is that the name of the event? The Aquatic Expo. It's both freshwater and saltwater, and I will be hanging out with the Carolina Reefing community and everybody there. What's up, Bahama Llama? Saw you at Aquashella. And Reef Return, thank you so much for the 45 DKK. Hey all, looking at a flatworm on the front glass right now. Looks like a ghost flatworm, but this one is more purple. Should I be worried? Worry might be a little excessive. I'll be the first person to hate on flatworms. I always side to try to remove as many flatworms as I can. There's just not a lot of great ways to do it, unfortunately. So you kind of have to struggle through it. So it's one of those things where, like, back in the day, stuff like the Sailor Furt product, what's it called? Flatworm Exit. That stuff used to work really well. Stuff like levamisol used to work really well. And unfortunately now, you don't really have that many great options to deal with like an in-tank flatworm treatment. Like you can knock down a huge number of them, but they tend to come back a lot. You can try something that eats them, like Springer's damsels or just damsels in general. That tends to help keep those populations down. I don't know, obviously, what kind exactly that you have, but um, they come in on so many different things that you wouldn't expect. Like pretty much any time that we get a shipment of cleanup crew, they're coming in on the cleanup crew, that sort of thing. So short of you like really going through and treating your cleanup crew and quarantining and all that, it's really, really difficult to keep some random flatworm out of your tank. The idea is like hopefully you're avoiding a really bad flatworm, which the worst flatworms to get are the kinds that would eat a coral, obviously. But there's plenty that'll also eat the cleanup crew, and that's how they got in to begin with. Because that one snail, turns out that wasn't a snail. It was a giant flatworm that happens to eat snails. That happens a lot. So it's always good to like try to prevent as much of that stuff from coming in as possible, because whole tank treatments are less and less effective. Predator thing might still be a good idea though. The Aquatic Expo, saltwater, freshwater, and reptiles. There you go. Dangles, Yothan, here's your monthly reminder to get the TG dive trip on the books. How about flower gardens banks in the Gulf? You know, it's one of those things like as I get older, it's like I wonder if like my sense of adventure keeps on going down and down and down. I had a podcast guest recently that was Elliot from Marine Collectors, and he goes and collects fish by hand, and he just free dives like all day. And I said he invited me to some dive trips. I'm just like, this sounds amazing and all, but I don't know if I want to spend all day diving on a boat. Back like 10 years ago, this would have been a no-brainer. I'd be in the ocean like immediately. But now I'm like, you know, I've gotten in the water enough. Maybe it's time I just have a cocktail at the bar and enjoying the weather from the beach. So, yeah, we shall see. We shall see. I haven't dove in forever, like pre-COVID. I think, where was I even? I think I did it in Mexico. Anyway, yeah, I should because I've got so many like random invites to do diving, like in Japan and in Hawaii and stuff like that, and I really should before it's completely physically impossible for me to do it. RASes for flatworm control. Legit, they do help. My personal favorite is still damsels, even though damsels can tend to be jerks. Oh, funny. So Cheezel says yellow chorus and blue velvet slug work for me. Okay, so here's my experience with blue velvet slugs. They are particular to a certain type of flatworm. They typically go for those kind of rust colored ones, and these are very typical, okay? But we happen to have the ones that just like to park themselves onto LPS. This was like years ago. I don't even know if we have those flatworms anymore because we went through and we nuked tanks hardcore to try to get rid of like all that stuff. But anyway, so these are like the kind of the tan colored larger flatworms that tend to hang out on LPS and maybe some leathers and mushrooms and stuff. Anyway, we put these velvet slugs in, and they went through and they just immediately started like just to eat these flatworms. And after about 20 minutes, they just kind of keeled over onto their backs. And I was like, "Oh, well that's interesting. I wonder how if that's normal." No, it's not normal. They just died on the spot. Because flatworms, it turns out, they're poisonous, and they're poisonous in different ways. So the toxins that are in like the rust-colored flatworms, these sea slugs can handle just fine. But these tan-colored larger flatworms were every bit toxic still to these slugs. So like our experiment with those guys lasted about half hour tops. Don't be too old. I want to go diving all day on a boat. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Just saying. Just saying. I mean, you're still quite a bit younger than I am, but after the age of 40, it's like you just get that reality check. It's like you just like look down stairways, and it's like, you know what? I could see tumbling down one of these one day. Like all of a sudden, it's like that reality, which was never a consideration, could become a thing. Okay, Braden Sales. What's the difference between Avatar Chalice and an Aquamarine Chalice? Those two look very similar. Their pattern is ever so slightly different. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I have a feeling that, you know what? Let me pull it up. I'll tell you exactly. I just need to pull it up. All right, because I have a feeling it's like the actual mouth looks different. Okay. Aquamarine Chalice, and we have the Avatar Chalice. Okay, so right away, the area around the mouth is going to be different. So on the Avatar Chalice, there's a lot more of a purple ring with kind of a, I guess it's a little bit more reddish center, whereas the Aquamarine doesn't have nearly that much purple, and it's going to be more of an orange center around the mouth. Also, the Avatar Chalice has a lot more of that sky blue streaking in it. That's probably the most noticeable difference. But yeah, when you see them side by side, especially in the same tank, they're different colors in that way. The green is really the only thing that's consistent about them. They both grow at about the same rate as well. Daniel Jackson. I had that thought looking down my stairs. Yeah, and also I've got cats, and one of my cats, for whatever reason, has like this natural propensity just to like want to dive at my feet. She's just, it's like she's a linebacker in a past life or something. She like form tackles like all the time. So I could, because I always heard like of somebody getting injured in like the sports world or something. And it's like, oh yeah, I fell down the stairs because of my cat. And it's like, that's a really dumb excuse, you know? It's just to tell the truth. You were drinking too much, you got hurt somehow, and that's why you're not available on Sunday. But now that I've actually had cats and I have stairs, and this cat absolutely wants to dive at my feet, like as I'm going down the stairs. So I'm like extra careful. I get it. Dangles, Red Dragon Acro. I bought one, dipped it on arrival in Revive, completely dead the next morning. Tips to not do that? Would Reef Primer been better? There are a couple of acros that you simply can't dip, unfortunately. That is one of them. Pretty much any of those, like those really thin branched smooth skin guys, so that's Hawkins at Chinata, Fire Dragon, Red Dragon. There might be a couple others, but they do not handle dipping at all in any way, shape, or form. um, we're hesitant to say like don't dip, like for anything, because anything is possible to come on coral, right? But of all the corals, I would say that those three acros are as close to if you dip this thing, it will die territory, and especially after shipping. We just stopped dipping them altogether because it's one of those things where the sort of things that a dip is really going to manage typically don't ever show up on that type of coral. So, like, the thing that I would really want to dip for would be like acro eating flatworms. And dips are only marginally effective at dealing with acro eating flatworms because if there are eggs, the eggs survive. Um, but the dip is almost certain to kill those types of acros. And I guess like if you wanted to extend it a little bit further, most acros after shipment are in such a weakened state that in a perfect world they wouldn't be dipped immediately upon arrival anyway. It helps to have like a day or two in quarantine or some other place where they can just kind of recover from the shipping stress and then go through like a dip before it hits your main aquarium. But again, not everybody has that. Um, I would probably recommend not dipping those three varieties of acro in the future. Just because, like I said, you're not really going to get pests, meaning you're not going to get any pests by nailing them with a dip. Um, and the only kind of pests that I ever really see on them are like the little bugs, like copepod. What are they called? Like the white bugs, ostracods, and stuff like that. Red bugs, maybe. And a dip isn't going to really deal with those anyway. You're going to be wanting to look at interceptor for that. So, yeah, long story short, everybody likes to dip because it seems like the responsible thing to do, but understand that it is inherently stressful on corals. It is inherently dangerous, but it is something that it's a calculation of how much risk do I want to take on new arrivals versus all the corals currently in my system. And at that point, you might want to have like a candid discussion about with yourself about setting up a quarantine tank for exactly this sort of reason. Arbor Press, why do you think decorative sponges aren't sold as often as corals? I purchased some a few months ago and they really make a tank feel more reefy and diverse. I dose Phyto daily. So there's a couple of reasons. Certain sponges do really well in our systems. They tend to be very ugly looking and aggressive towards corals. Like the worst issues we can have here aren't any kind of like coral eating pest. It is going to be like invasive sponge. There's practically nothing you can do about invasive sponges because they are so tough. I have soaked them in fresh water. They don't care. I have exposed them to air for like a long time. They don't really care. All manner of things. I've scraped them down to the point where I can't see them. They grow back. Stuff like that. The pretty decorative sponges, oftentimes the best looking ones, just die on their own. They die if you look at them too long. We used to have, when live rock was more prevalent, we used to have like these bright yellow ones that would grow on like the underside of rocks. And it's like, oh, that is awesome. We just flip it over just so you can actually see it. Within a day, they're all dead just because you exposed them to light. Like the act of observing them was too much. But like the problematic sponges just hang out and they suffocate coral and all manner of things. That could be the reason why you don't see a lot of that. You kind of have this like this bipolar nature. It's like kills corals and is invincible on one side and really pretty and dies when you look at it on the other side. The other thing is like for the ones that are really delicate, it's kind of unclear what their requirements are because it's not just feeding. They need like silicate additions and stuff. They like their biology is kind of difficult to figure, and a lot of them don't want anything to do with light. So there's some folks that have better success keeping them in like a cryptic area of the sump. Sometimes they like, I guess they like anaerobic conditions practically, like really low flow and stuff. It's very different from what people normally see in a reef aquarium, I guess. Not an expert on sponges, clearly. I can't even kill them when I want to. Zachary Lewis, just wanted to say y'all are my favorite seller. Thank you. Corals are always acclimate the best in my tanks. We try. We try. I would say that we really try to make everything here happy. And we're like 99% of the way there. But it's that last 1% that's so confounding because we keep such a diversity of animals here, and they come from different places, they come from different conditions, and they all kind of have to adjust to like the median. And certain ones on the fringes will never be happy, but it is always that pursuit of it that's always kind of, it's rewarding in one way and it's also very frustrating in another because you can't, at least we can't make everything happy all in the same tank or all in the same number of tanks. Okay. SM Aubuchon. I'm probably butchering your name. I'm so sorry. How hard are pectinia? Fairly easy. Your video says not. Um, if they're okay to care for and not hard to frag, why are they higher priced? They are slower growing. So in order for you to actually aquaculture pectinia, it is a heck of a commitment. Not too many places will do it. Right now, it is easier just to get them in from the wild, and they're not that cheap coming in straight from the wild either. Uh, but yeah, like it takes months to produce frags, like months, and so a lot of places simply don't have the square footage to dedicate like month plus long grow outs and stuff like that. Reef keeper. Every dip I've used has killed red dragon except potassium chloride. We've killed them before with potassium chloride too, or just potassium dips. Potassium like potassium dips, potassium chloride, reef primer, that sort of like powdered stuff tends to be the most gentle across the board. It is my favorite dip. I have personally killed them before with it. Just saying. Goose 13, been waiting all month for this. Well, welcome. Glad you could attend. We will also be running it back in 2 weeks. Not the exact same corals, granted, but just how the calendar scheduling works out. Next week, I'm going to be going down to Charlotte for a trade show, Brandy's trade show. That's the Aquatic Expo. I shouldn't say it's Brandy's trade show. It is a trade show that Brandy is helping with. Aquatic Expo down there. Week after that, we are doing another one of these live shows. Okay. I had a green bird's nest colony, polyp bail out in large sections on me, then same day grew dark brown, almost purple sludge all over it where it bailed out. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, so I've never actually seen that happen. That's really weird. This is kind of an ongoing discussion that I've been having with a couple of folks in the industry about the whole thing of bacteria biome and stuff like that. I've done a couple of Reef Receipts episodes with Brandy. This past weekend, I met Salem from Reef Builders, and that's kind of like his wheelhouse. That's really what his interest set is. That's what he studied a lot in college, and that's clearly like his passion area when it comes to like the whole reef aquarium stuff is kind of to understand bacterial populations better and the interactions of them. And a lot of a lot of the papers kind of talk about like bacteria ecosystems and bacterial balance because it's not like, oh, you got a specific bacteria and it killed your coral and you need to kill it, because that's a very tempting model to kind of go off of, right? It's almost like, oh, like I have a fish illness, I need to kill that particular illness and then fish will be better. Bacteria doesn't quite work in the same way because this particular bacteria might have been in the coral the entire time and it wasn't a problem. it wasn't pathogenic. But because of certain things in the ecosystem of that aquarium, it was made toxic, or not toxic, but like it was made deadly to the coral. It was made pathogenic. Like there's different things that activated. All of a sudden, there are some genes that get turned off and on, and suddenly this thing is a killer. And so the answers that we're looking for simply aren't there right now as to why that happens. It could be a bacterial balance thing because certain bacterias keep other bacterias in check. And when this imbalance happens and some of these other bacteria start to struggle, the ones that they were holding down then get free reign of that bacterial ecosystem, turn pathogenic, then kill the coral. And it's really, again, it's really tempting just to be like, I'm just going to antibiotic everything. But a lot of these interactions aren't well understood. And and while there might be some benefits to doing antibiotics, just the puzzle's way more complicated. And there's also stuff that's not particularly affected by antibiotics that if you nuke the biome could also go out of control. Stuff like fungus. Because fungus are eukaryotic, they don't care about a lot of these different bacteria, or I'm sorry, different antibiotics. There are viruses. They don't care about your antibiotics. And if you kind of throw off these bacterial balances, you then, I guess, open up power vacuums for things like fungus and viruses. So again, really, really difficult to understand if there is understanding at all. There's not a ton of publications. I mean, again, Brandy and I looked at a couple publications. There was a recent article in Reef Builders where Salem was talking about it. But my thing that I'm trying now is to try to bring bacterial balances more in line. And I don't even know if there's a good way to do that. So I'm trying a couple of different bacterial additives. Some might be better than others, but I'm kind of trying them like in bulk, in wholesale. So just to say, good luck, fellas. Hopefully you kind of work some of this stuff out. Because like right now, I would say there's a couple of corals that are struggling here and there. Nothing that we would call a crisis. But I also, in trying to fix this issue, don't want to cause a crisis. So long story short, when it comes to stuff like what you're seeing in your bird's nest, it is a very, very complicated question that I don't know if anybody really has the answer to. Okay. Clay, speaking of dipping, have you seen any difference between using Polyp Lab Reef Primer and potassium chloride? So, if you're like on a super budget, potassium chloride absolutely works. I mean, it is one of the potassium salts in Reef Primer. Now, I can't get into all the proprietary stuff that's in Reef Primer because I don't know all the proprietary stuff. But from what I understand, it is different than just potassium chloride. And where the differences start to matter is that some of these potassium salts affect different pests differently and also requires a lower concentrations of all of them together, so that like if a coral, for instance, is a little bit more sensitive to a particular potassium salt, it is in a lower concentration, so it is again gentler. Is that something that you want to dabble with? Go right ahead. Like if you just wanted to play with these different potassium salts, or if you just wanted to buy a product off the shelf, cool. Like I am of the laziness that I would prefer just to purchase at a premium the dip in its constituent form. Now, having said that, I also have a staff here, and it's kind of important that I take as much of that off of their plate as possible to minimize mistakes. It's one thing if you're the mad scientist and you're the only one like messing with your tank, but when it's a team of people messing with these tanks, um, I mean, it's not even like, oh, like some, you want to reduce the opportunities for mistakes, right? And this is one of those things like, look, it's an off the product shelf. All you need to do is make sure you're putting the right quantity, not mixing it up from scratch and then trying to dose it. So there's some thought process behind that. Is it different? Yes, it is different. Let's see. Zachary Lewis, any plans on selling coralline algae starter culture again? Possibly. So here's our problem with the coralline algae starter culture. It doesn't ship that well. Like, a lot of it just kind of like spoils in the packaging. So we don't know how great it is. I mean, I'm sure that it'll grow coralline, but it's one of those things that's like, it's not a great customer experience. And truth be told, you probably don't need it. It was something that we were selling just because we were scraping and throwing it down the sink. But if you're patient at all with your aquarium, you probably could not prevent coralline algae from growing. It'll just show up and stick around. Okay. Poke pack fire. What is vibrant, bacteria or chemicals? I think that it was likely a herbicide, and the marketing was that it was bacteria, and I think that was the real whole drama and conundrum with that. I forget like who was talking about that, but it was like they did some analysis, and it appeared to be very similar to this other herbicide that was on the market for less. And so that was like, why are you charging more and saying it's something else when it appears to be this herbicide? Oh, by the way, uh, Vibrant works. It does what it says it was meant to do. It was meant to kill algae because it's a herbicide. So it was never an issue of like whether or not it works. It does, but the lying about what it is allegedly was the whole drama there. I don't even know what the deal with the Vibrant is now. Like, are they even still around? Like, that's a conversation topic that I really haven't heard about in a while. Woody's gamertag. I spilled a lot of pellets in my 150 gallon. How long before the impact shows up on an NO3 PO4 test kit? Probably immediately. Like a lot of these things are going to show up pretty quick. Let's see. The marketing was to get around Amazon rules, I think. Ah. Oh, what the heck? Screensaver, no. That is interesting. I mean, that's problematic in its own ways, I guess. Uh, that's like doubling down on deception to different people for different reasons. It's like, uh, yeah. It turns out that like algicides and herbicides, they do a good job of killing what it is that they're supposed to kill. Yeah. Yup. So what is going on here? I guess I could talk a little bit about Aquashella since I was more or less just got back from it. Spent last weekend in Dallas. And this is the second year in a row, you guys, that my flight was delayed. Like so last year, that was tough because I was delayed once I was already in the air. I was supposed to land like fairly early in the afternoon and then do like this like laundry list of things the entire day. And none of that happened because I got delayed. Like storms over the DFW. I landed in Austin for like 3 hours or something like that. It took forever. And by the time that I landed in Dallas, all those like different things that I was hoping to do were not possible. I was supposed to see Vibrant Coral. I was supposed to record something with Queen of Reef. So I ended up showing basically to up to the after party, um, and I was not in a good mood. I had to be like I had to be practically dragged out of my hotel room to the bar to socialize. I was just not having it. I was in such a grumpy mood. This year, I guess this is better. I wasn't on a plane when I got delayed. I had just got to the airport, sat down at my gate, and instantly my phone started going off, and it's all these like notifications from like the American Airlines app. It's like, by the way, your 1 p.m. flight, it's gonna now be a 6 p.m. flight, and I'm like, okay, I'm stuck in CLE, possibly the most boring airport ever. I mean, it's not the Singapore airport where it's like, oh, I'm stranded here for 5 hours, no problem. I'm just gonna go see Dune in IMAX right here at the airport. No, no, no. We don't got it like that here in Cleveland, right? So my options were to go home and then come back later. I'm not that close to the airport. So for me to like leave and come back, that's like an hour and a half of drive time. So I would have spent close to 3 hours driving back and forth to the airport that day. Or I could just stay at the airport and just like do computer stuff for 5 hours. So I just decided to stick around at the airport. Luckily, though, I was able to at least do some of the stuff that I was planning on doing. So I got to see Vibrant Coral. That was a good experience. It was good to see another wholesaler, stuff like that. But I'd say that the biggest thing about Aquashella this year that's different than years past is that I kind of had this renewed interest in freshwater of all things. I had set up a small aquarium that was designed to save some struggling mangrove plants in my greenhouse. They were not happy because I had painted the greenhouse to make it like a lot cooler of a structure, especially in the summertime. It's like the best thing I've ever done for that greenhouse. It easily has dropped the temperature like 10 to 15 degrees. It's really nice, but it made it dark. And it's so dark, in fact, that most of the day, like the security cameras that we have are in night vision mode. And that's like with all the tank lights on, with full sun, it's that dark. So these plants were not having it. So I decided just to set up a little freshwater thing because I had read that they could actually do well in freshwater, even better than in saltwater. So far, I'd say that it's marginally successful at saving mangroves, but the freshwater tank itself is looking pretty good. And that's kind of like what got me into looking more at the freshwater section of Aquashella, which is pretty big. Woody's Gamertag, $5. Thank you so much for the super chat. My wife and I are going to the Aquatic Expo. Are you speaking? No. Setting up a booth? Definitely no. How do we get the fan experience? You just have to track me down. You just have to like look around. I'll probably be wearing a suit. Might be the only guy there wearing a suit, which is hilarious. So, I once got mistaken for frost corals. And if you guys have been to trade shows and have seen frost corals, he is another coral seller here in like the Northeast Ohio region, and he's Asian. The difference is he always wears like a tank top, and I don't. So it was funny that I got mistaken for frost corals at one of these events. So if you are looking for me at the Aquatic Expo, I am not the guy in a tank top selling coral. I'll be the guy in a suit. Dan will be an honored guest. He'll be walking around the show. Yes. I am like, when it comes to speaking, like public speaking and all that, I'm extremely non-committal. So I'm so sorry for all the folks that have asked in the past. Like, I've spoken once at Aquashella, I've spoken once at Reefstock, and I basically have a standing invite to be a speaker at any of these shows. But I think that I'll do speeches when I actually have something to say. It takes a long time for me to actually to prepare for one of these things. It's like 100 hours, and I don't like the feeling of having to give a talk at these things because it's just like this baseline level of anxiety, I guess. And the thing is, I'm not actually anxious about giving a talk. Like, I happen to be a very good public speaker. It is just this feeling. And so that's why I always try to schedule myself when I do give talks. It's like I want to be the first speaker on the first day so that my speaking obligations are done the moment the show happens. I was when I gave my talk for Aquashella, and this is when I got first speaker first day, and I was like, I was kind of laughing inside because my speech time was before general admission was even allowed into the venue. It was only VIP and early bird tickets on the first day. So I was like, man, no one's gonna even see my talk. And part of me is thinking that's gonna be awesome. Like, I don't care if nobody sees my talk. I'll just give my talk to an empty gallery of chairs and get off stage. It'll be perfect. No, first person, first day, no general admission for me was packed house, standing room only still. And there were still VIPs that were in line so long that they missed my 45-minute talk. Like, that's how busy that show was. But again, I was perfectly okay talking to nobody. But it also solidified in me, like, for all future shows, first speaker, first day is awesome. So if I ever do agree to a speaking engagement, book me at that time. That is part of the contract. Write that in. Write that in, along with just all blue M&Ms in the green room. It's like, yeah, that has to be a thing. Okay, trigger pulled. Space Invader coming to Maine. Awesome. Yeah, Pectinia are fairly easy to keep. The only thing about the Space Invader is you want to give it plenty of room because of all the different Pectinia varieties. They tend to be the most sweeper stingy. My wife and I should show up like it's black tie in solidarity. You should. You should. It's a fun thing to dress up, I think. It is people always ask like why do you dress up? Is it like part of the brand thing? And it's like it is only part of the brand as a super tangential thing. I really like dressing up. That is my real deal hobby these days. And any opportunity, any excuse to dress up, I'm doing it. So when it comes to trade shows, when it's the airplane on the way to the trade show, I'm going to be dressed up. Um, yeah, it's like the 1950s all over again. I dress up to go to the airport, but it serves another purpose too, I guess, because nowadays my schedule is so tight that I have a place to be the moment I land. So that's become more and more and more common, like the last several trips I've taken, where like, yeah, my itinerary starts the second that I land, get an Uber to wherever. Like there's something going on. So it's pretty much like time to go. It's like, be a professional. Dan doesn't talk because he's old and not adventurous. Yeah, that's true too. It was the busiest talk of the entire convention and still before general admission. I didn't see the other people's talks, but Yeah, my talk was well attended for sure. For sure. And it was actually kind of funny because that was the event where so Jake was still with us at the time, and he was speaking right after me, and he was there with his wife Windsor, and that was like the first time that I met Windsor, and he was blown away by my public speaking. He's just like, dude. He's like, gee, like he was like really really impressed, and he's been wanting me to be a speaker at Reefstock for like the longest time, and that was like when he started to do like as many pitches as he could from that point on to like try to get me to be a speaker at Restock, and finally I did do it. It takes forever for people to actually get me to speak at these things. Terry Kuhn, hello. Your pink constellation zoas, are they pink and blue? They look more blue than pink lighting. Um, Okay, so when it comes to zoas and color, and this goes for like a lot of things, okay? The color that you want your corals to express a lot of times is going to be basically 100% dependent on your lighting. Um, if you don't have really dialed in lighting for a specific aesthetic, you just simply won't have that aesthetic. So that is going to be pretty much all on the user. Obviously, like some corals are such and such color naturally, some are a different thing. But yeah, some corals, if you have an ounce of daylight lighting, aren't going to look like anything. And I think that kind of takes a lot of people by surprise. It's like, well, I kind of expected it to be like such and such color. And I'm like, it can be. You just have to change your lighting. And unfortunately, that might affect other corals in your tank. But yeah, aesthetics is like a big deal when it comes to the lengths that you might have to go through to get certain coloration, whether that's just tweaking lighting to get a certain effect, or in the case of like the SPS crowd, to literally tailor every aspect of their aquarium, where it's lighting, water chemistry down to the specific trace elements, to the flow, to the everything, stocking levels, all of that. Um, yeah. So if you're looking for like a particular coloration, it's going to require some degree of tweaking. First speaker, first day, but with your luck, your plane will be delayed. Delayed. Yeah, that's why I show up the day before. Because usually the events are on Saturday, and there are activities happening both Thursday and Friday night. For those that know, yeah, it's more industry stuff though, to be perfectly honest. My LED is cheap, so this is Giannis. My LED is cheap and doesn't have good spread. I have a purple stylo that is otherwise doing great under it, but certain shadowed areas have bleached. Would an AI blade bring those areas back? Okay, so when it comes to so it comes to lighting in general, since we were on the topic of lighting color, the probably the most important aspect of lighting nowadays, and this wasn't quite the case back when like T5 and metal halide were more popular. LEDs don't have reflectors, right? So back in the day, you used to have like a fluorescent tube, and you'd have like a reflector system, sometimes like this butterfly, like this bird shaped thing. And when you look up at the reflector, it looks like there's a dozen tubes like looking right back at you, right? Because of all the reflectors. And what that does for you is it gives you all of these different angles where it's hitting like everything super evenly and smooth. Whereas like in LED, you have like the light emitter, and then you have like an optic that kind of like covers a square footage, like like a footprint, but you don't get angles like that. It's all coming from like a very individual directional source. And so what you end up getting is a lot of harsh shadows. So up top where the light is directly hitting your coral, it'll be whatever par that you kind of like dialed in for the light. It could be very bright. It could be like 400 par, let's say. Yeah, that's pretty bright. It's the second that you get a shadow, it's zero. Like there's nothing there. And corals, most of them, don't appreciate being in zero light. So these days, I think that people have to pay more attention to lighting as a three-dimensional thing. So this is where having lower powered fixtures spread out over like a larger area and at different angles tends to help. And that's why you see something where like you might have like I don't know, like an Ecotech Radiant, for example, or any kind of like puck based lighting system. But then you also have like the bars, like LED bars, whether they be Orphic or Reef Bright or something like that, kind of like hovering to the side and then tilted ever so slightly. And that kind of gives you like these different angles that cover that same space. Theoretically, the LED strips should have been able to do it by themselves. Theoretically, the Ecotech Radion should have been able to cover that square footage by itself. But really what's lacking is all these different angles. And you're seeing what happens when you don't have those angles. You're just running into an issue where there's just simply no light hitting that particular spot. So I think that you're probably going to see more and more and more like systems that just have what looks like overkill in terms of the number of fixtures, and they're all just turned down lower. Which, by the way, might be a really good thing because it's one of those things where a lot of what makes LEDs fail is like heat management. And by running LEDs much lower, you kind of eliminate that propensity for them to burn out. So, and it's burnout not from like because LEDs supposed to last like a super long time, but they kind of like suffer from heat stroke, and a lot of lighting systems don't have the heat management that's necessary. But that's also kind of a way that you can avoid that, is like run them at lower power. And you really didn't need the power, you needed the angle, you needed the coverage. CGK. That's why I think all products sold online should have two pictures, one completely white light and one with some blue, not all this hyperfluorescence. Yeah, but even then, I mean, there's always some degree of education that kind of has to happen. And unfortunately, because this is one of those of the hobby in general. It's very difficult to capture what something looks like. Um, you try to do as best you can, but this stuff doesn't photograph well to begin with. We're like professionals, and some stuff still doesn't photograph well. And on top of that, like sometimes seeing it in person doesn't help either. I've told this story before, but I'll just tell it again. We have a wholesaler, like not in town, but nearby. And sometimes we buy from them. Sometimes they buy from us. And one time I went over to their place and I saw like a tray of like these incredible Montipora. Like it just glowed like crazy. It stood out from everything else in this giant system. I'm like, man, I need to get those. So I bought them, brought them back to the greenhouse system that we had at the time. And sure enough, we had those already. In fact, not only did we have them, we recently sold those to that same wholesaler. Like I literally went and bought back my own stuff just because I was looking at it under slightly different lighting and from top down rather than through the glass that I'd normally look at. So even somebody like me who should be acutely familiar with what that Montipora looked like, having seen it in person at my own facility and at their facility, I still made the mistake of thinking that it was something different and then literally putting my money where my mouth is in error and buying it back. So you're not ever going to have the experience of a retailer ever being able to handhold you through the process. You kind of have to already have an idea of what something looks like, having an idea of what that looks like under the bluest of blue lights, and then also having like an idea of like how much that particular vendor is um, being heavy-handed with color processing, because there's like plenty of people that we buy from sight unseen. We'll see their pictures online, and it's like, yeah, I know that I have to mentally discount that by a lot. It's like, okay, what I'm seeing there, it's probably going to be a lot more brown in person than what I'm seeing. Like a lot of those highlights that look yellow right now are probably not yellow. It's probably trash. And then so and even my guys are like, I think this is a winner, and I'm like, you're probably going to be disappointed if you buy that coral from like one of our suppliers. It's simply not going to look like that. So yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those things where it is tricky enough on its own to show something, but to also meet up with the expectations of everybody else looking at it, it's even more tricky. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's a learning experience for everybody. But directly to your comment, we do show two pictures on our website, one of more of a daylight look, one of more of an actinic look. And then also on this particular live stream, we're showing a color gradient go from daylight to actinic. And still, it is an imperfect practice. Let's see. Hi, Than. You made a video about non-photosynthetic corals many years ago. I wonder if you still have that running and you're still interested in NPS corals. We do. I mean, we have some non-photos right now. Mainly, we have fathead dendros. They're tricky because there's a lot of complications that you run into with them. Like, it's not just like the feeding is the least difficult part. The biggest part is algae control, because they tend to live in like higher nutrient systems because of how much you have to feed. And then you can't really have a lot of like the really good herbivorous fish, because they're also the ones that are most likely to pick the food out of them. And so like I can't have like fox face with them, for example. They'll just get chewed on. So I've got to rely on like a horde of snails and stuff like that. So it's tricky. It's tricky because algae growth right up on them is like the biggest deal. We sell one or two every now and again, but the pain in the butt level very high. What is up, Sagi? Tech Gear Talk. How's it going? You're gonna set up a reef tank soon? Probably not. Oh, funny thing. Okay, so Sagi from Tech Gear Talk, he's been in the hobby. Well, he's been out of the hobby for like a really long time, but he used to be in the hobby. That's how we met. And he had given me two acrylic tanks, and that has been a long work in progress for me because it was. I mean, these tanks must be like 20 years old, and they're acrylic. So you know when you have acrylic, you look at it, it scratches. Well, these have been in storage for a long time and probably been jostled around, and there's some like hefty gouges in them. So I have been messing around with doing the whole like, okay, I'm going to try to buff these things back from the dead to something that looks show polished again. And it's been an interesting process. Like I'm learning a lot about different grits of sandpaper and what they do to acrylic. So yeah, I'll let you guys know how that goes. But yeah, I've had these things for like a year at least and haven't set them up yet. Um, but hopefully fairly soon. I'm getting a stand from Alufab. Shout out to Alufab if you guys want like metal stands. They're the ones to hit up. Alufab Inc. Not sponsored yet, but yeah. So they're gonna send over a stand. We're gonna get those guys on stands. I'm gonna polish the heck out of them. A lot of hours of orbital sanding in my future. It'll be a good time. Good time. Yeah, the other thing that we're kind of like toying with the idea of, and I know that this is obviously very off topic, but I want to have a freshwater aquascaper on my podcast to talk about a lot of the design principles in freshwater so that perhaps we can implement something similar in the saltwater world. So when it comes to like aquascapes, I think within like the last few years is the first time that anybody has really done anything remotely interesting with aquascapes in saltwater where, people are actually gluing their own custom aquascapes together. Like that wasn't a thing just, 5 years ago. That absolutely wasn't something that people did. But now, like, people are getting more artistic with it. Sometimes too artistic, because it turns out a lot of fish don't like the balloon animal aquascapes, and so that there's some complexities there. But compared to the freshwater side, it's a completely different world. Like, they have competitive world rankings of aquascapers. And just in talking with them, it's a completely different discussion than what you have with saltwater folks. Like for me, when I have a discussion about saltwater systems and saltwater aquarium stuff, like you could literally have an empty aquarium, like not even have any fish, no live rock, no corals, no water, okay? And all of the discussion is going to be about the equipment. It's going to be like what type of tank, what's the tank construction, what type of stand is it on, is the sump remote or underneath, is it in a filtration room, what types of stages of filtration are we talking about, and like let's talk about the skimming technology. Are you using ozone? What's the UV looking like? Is it an integrated UV like an MRC, or is it in a separate tube? Like all these different things. Are there automatic water change systems? What is your control looking like? All these different things. What is your lighting talking? What is your methodology for water chemistry? Do you also have automatic testing? Do you do ICP? Blah 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 blah. Right? The freshwater side doesn't care about any of that. It is almost all about artistic vision, and it's almost like the technology side of freshwater has been set in stone and functional for a billion years, where it's like filtration is a canister filter. That's good enough. It's been good enough forever. Or there's like a sponge filter in an air stone. That's been good enough forever. All of the thought process is on the aesthetics, and that is so highly refined over decades that yeah, it's just such a different focus. And I know that now people are paying more attention to that sort of thing in the saltwater space. That's a very new thing. Like the vast majority of the people, I think, are still just doing like rock wall and every coral that they've ever wanted stuck on there somehow. So anyway, I would like to invite a couple of like the freshwater folks to bring in that perspective, because uh, y'all's tanks are boring. I'll just come out and say it. I am so bored of looking at saltwater aquariums that are completely uninspired when it comes to aquascape. And so like I have to find like inspiration on the equipment side. So I can talk to Raj at MRC forever about that type of stuff, because again, that's the novelty of it, is like bringing like industrial design stuff that works in public aquariums to like the extreme hobbyist angle, like that sort of stuff. But just me looking at another 120-gallon tank, it's a tough sell, guys. It's been almost 30 something years that I've been doing this. There's very few like things that move the aesthetic hobbyist needle for me. One of the things though is that people are now experimenting more with like macroalgae aquariums, and those are kind of cool. And they have their own complete set of ridiculous challenges, much like a planted freshwater tank. So yeah, maybe I can get some of those folks to come in and chat as well, because they're doing something cool and different. Freshwater aquascaper in your podcast +1. And by the way, guys, this is the beauty of having like having a fairly mature channel on YouTube where I don't care about like subscribers or viewership. I just want to make the content that I really want to make because the YouTube algorithm like punishes people for doing stuff that's kind of like off of their niche. So the fact that I'm doing a podcast at all, like those videos get like half the viewership of all of my other types of content. Like this live stream is going to get half the viewership of like a regular Reef Aquarium video. I totally get that. But like I said, I am not thirsty for subscribers anymore. Like I'm good. I just want to make the content that I'm really interested in making. So, absolutely possible to have like a freshwater guy come on and talk about aquascaping. Yeah, a high-tech freshwater tank means they have CO2 being dosed. Exactly. Oh, that reminds me, okay? Their idea of a high-end, like ultra expensive filter is hilarious, you guys. Hilarious. Okay. So, uh, a canister filter is like 100 to 200 bucks. Maybe like the biggest top end one, 400 bucks retail. Okay. And that's like the biggest Fluval FX, whatever, the size of like a 5 gallon bucket. But there's a Japanese aquascaper. He's no longer with us. His name is Amano, like the most famous aquascaper, probably, right? I actually saw his like masterpiece exhibit at the Sumida Aquarium in Tokyo. Very cool. I was very ignorant of what I was looking at the time, but that's like a very so Amano is like a big name when it comes to like freshwater aquascaping. Well, they have a product line, and they sell a stainless steel canister filter. It's like $1,000, and you guys would laugh so hard at what this thing really consists of. It has like a pump on top. It that's it. It's a stainless steel column with a lid and a pump on top. And what you do is you take a bag, like a little filter bag, and you fill it with activated carbon. And then you rinse that out in the sink. And you put it into this canister filter and close it. That's $1,000, guys. That's $1,000. It's straight up just a carbon reactor, an activated carbon cylinder. Yeah, it's like that is the cream of the crop Rolls Royce filter in the freshwater side. What is up, Pepe Naker? How's it going? Haven't seen you in the longest time. You and I need to hang out again. Get a flight to Ohio. We'll have a good time. I have two $1,700 sumps sitting next to me. It's how it be sometimes. And oh yeah, that's the other thing. Sumps, not really a thing in freshwater. I learned that. Okay, so I'm gonna give my friend up in Toronto a little plug here, because he sent when I wanted to do my little mangrove rescue tank. Uh, so my friend, what's the name of his stupid company? I'm even blowing my free promo for him. It is okay. So it's March's company. So he does Fragbox corals on YouTube, and his Reef Casa is the name of the brand of like the little all-in-ones that he does. Okay, so he sent me a little 20-gallon Reef Casa, and I'm like, because I've set up tanks before, and I was like, I noticed that a lot of freshwater tanks don't really have overflows and stuff. It's like, and like I don't know how they manage like surface skimming, in like a gross no flow tank. That must be really gross, right? But big brain reef aquarist here, I know that there's these things called overflow boxes, and this all-in-one tank has an overflow to take care of the surface scum problem. Yeah, like 9,000 level, freshwater IQ being applied here. No. So the reason why freshwater tanks don't have overflows is almost everything in freshwater is like this big. Like, so I got some shrimp. Yeah, the shrimp go down the overflow and they get chewed up by the return pump. So we had to like engineer around that. And now we still have about 6 shrimp remaining. That was interesting. Um, There's other things. It turns out like freshwater snails are like really good at just crawling out of a tank. So every now and again we have to like rescue a dried up snail on the floor. Haven't figured out what the deal with that is just yet. But there, yeah, there's like all these like little aspects of the learning curve that I'm kind of dealing with. But yeah, no, like sumps really aren't a thing. Not so much on the freshwater side. You're not blowing the promo. You're building the suspense. Well, that's what you get for like a free promo, right? I'm much better about the paid promos, like Polyblab, for example. I'll get that name right. Reef with me. Reef Casa is flames. Yeah, so it is kind of this interesting thing of like all these like all-in-ones just like popping up out of nowhere. It seems because all-in-ones have been around forever, but it's almost like because I mean Coralfish 12G. I ran into him obviously at Aquashella. I asked him like, "How's your all-in-one tank project going?" He's like, "Yeah, it's all right." I know that like the bulk resupply folks, they're doing some like all-in-one thing. Obviously, Reef Casa um, in Canada, they're doing an all-in-one thing. They're like, make it as easy as possible for people. And I'm like, why are my snails crawling out? Yeah, I got them freshwater aquascaper problems apparently. But anyway, all right. So what number are we on? We're on number 134. So I think that we have about 100 or so left. Real quick, let me say the highs and hellos real fast to the Patreon and the YouTube member crowd. First off, obviously, thank you to the corporate sponsor of this show. That would be Polyp Lab. We might be getting another one. So, before I get into like the Patreon and the YouTube members, I was having a talk with who's I talking about? I was talking with Serpa Design, another YouTuber, and we were talking about the whole thing about sponsorships, and we were like, it would be so nice to just not have uh, like reef or like like just aquarium related sponsors because it's so much less dramatic and so much less it doesn't feel shilly, for example, because like because I happen to, for all the people that have ever sponsored us, we've used their product for like decades. Like I've purchased pallets of their stuff in the past, right? So I don't feel bad about it necessarily, but there's always like this underlying uh I guess I don't feel it, but it's this hint of shilliness within the industry. So we were talking about like, who I want a sponsorship from, like DeWalt. Because if you want to argue with me about like DeWalt versus Milwaukee versus Festool, I don't care. I just happen to have a lot of DeWalt batteries that power a lot of DeWalt tools around here. I will take that DeWalt money and shill for them completely conscious free. Like, yeah, just unconsciously go for that. And he was just like, I would love a DeWalt sponsorship because he does like tons of DIY stuff on his channel, right? He is basically a DIY ASMR channel as much as he is like an aquatics and terrarium and paludarium channel. Yeah, so like, yeah, absolutely. Like hook it up with that DeWalt sponsorship. Let's go. But anyway, Polyp Lab, thank you guys so much. Real quick, Patreon. Thank you so much, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Brandy Camp, Chuck Admire, Greg Zimmerman, Harkins Aquatics, ICP Test Hub, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, Lynn Holt, Miss Mandy, Puddle Aquatics, Ryan Baker, Scott Williams, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. And the YouTube members, Mark Baumgartner, William Heitz, Carlos Fernandez, Steven13, Mike Downey, Keith Holland, Terry Kuhn, Herb777, Justin Harden, and Ohio Ventures. And if I really ever got off my butt, I should just make a graphic overlay for these people. But I ain't about that life, apparently. Okay, Jerome, fan, would you recommend the Amazonas lights? Yeah, maybe. It depends on your application. If you're looking for crazy powered lights that can penetrate deep down into very tall aquariums, they might be one of like the few options that makes any sense at all. If you're talking about like a 2 foot deep tank, it's overkill. If you're talking about if you wanted to do what I did, because I have them over a 2 foot deep tank. If you wanted to mount them 6 feet in the air above your tank to have a completely unobstructed thing, maybe you want to grow mangroves in that tank, right? And you want to grow those mangroves to be actual trees, not just like little stublets, right? Yeah, you want like you want like a 10 foot tree one day. Yes, now you're talking. And at that point, so like the tree canopy would be lit by like those type of Amazonas, and you might even need like a secondary layer of lighting that's about 4 feet above the tank to actually light the corals and everything in the water, that sort of stuff. Um, if you have a giant aquarium that you just need like lots of spread and stuff, you can change the optics on them to give like spread. But again, you're dealing with angle issues more than you're dealing with like coverage issues. So you might still need a lot of fixtures. So far, they've held up just fine. The controller that we have is whack, but you wouldn't even be able to get our controller. They have an upgraded controller, which I understand is better. I don't think that there is a perfect controller out there for any of these products, any of these lighting products. Believe it or not, I still think that the best one for our use is the Ecotech Radeon, the much maligned Mobius system, right? Reason being, uh, we have to change our lighting for photography. So so it is very convenient for Becca, for example, to be able to just pull out the phone, change that entire tank's lighting, and have it revert on by itself 2 hours later. Very convenient. And then she has a manual Kessel where she's able to dial in specific spotlight color right then and there. So that works well for us. Honestly, most of you guys at home will never need to change the color of your lights. You'll set it up once. Chances are you'll set it up never. It'll be like, I'm going to do the AB plus profile. Done. All of that other control nonsense is just extra at that point. You'll never really need it. And so for some of our tanks where we don't even do a lot of shooting, we don't even worry about it. Like, we don't mess with those lights hardly ever. So the fact that they might not have the best controller in the world hasn't been an obstacle for us. But if we ever decided to like go away from Radeon for whatever reason, one of the biggest deciding factors on what we're going to go with isn't going to be some graphs about, oh, this is like the perfect spectrum for coral health nonsense. It's like, no, 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 no. We need to be able to photograph very effectively under this lighting, and we need to be able to change it on the fly very easily. Like, those are like the top two things. And so right now, the king of those top two things happens to be Ecotech. Even though Mobius has gremlins that well documented, we still have gremlins occasionally because it's all wireless chit chat talkie talkie, and so every now and again you just have like one light stay on all night, that sort of thing. Makes no sense. But for the utility that it provides for what we use it for, it is very good. Kirk C, are you using Polyb Labs Reef Primer? Yes. That is our number one go-to for dips. It is the most gentle dip that we have found, and it's very effective. Works out really nicely. So, what else is going on around here? we're trying to deal with like a couple of random fish issues. So like I think that we do fish poorly. Most people disagree with me because I'm focusing on like the one or two fish that aren't doing well. Um, but we're trying to do fish better. And I've picked Elliot from Marine Collector's brain as much as I can. I've picked Laura from the UK at Eco Marines. I've picked her brain. I've picked Patrick from Reef Wholesale up in Canada. Like, and these are all like different scales of operation when it comes to like bringing in and quarantining fish and all that. And so I have like a general idea of like what I want to be doing and what I want our capabilities of. I just want to do this stuff better, right? But for right now, I just have like a couple of 20-gallon tanks, and I'm trying to catch some fish that have been struggling for one reason or another, and just give them like a couple of treatments to knock down whatever weirdness is going on. And it's a major learning curve for me, but yeah, it's one of those things where like like our corals, I would have to say, not perfect, but really close to the point where I'm like, can't win them all, but we can win 99% of the battles, right? Fish, it's one of those things where like I definitely want to do better because they're looking back at me and they're really, really, really unhappy for whatever reason. I'm like, I feel sorry for them. I really want to help them out and do it in such a way that I don't, kill them in trying to medicate them. So that whole thing has been a thing. And unfortunately, I just have like these like makeshift 20-gallon nonsense aquariums. I'm talking with MRC about doing like a big budget version, but that's also like one of those work in progress sort of things because we don't sell fish. I'm literally doing this to try to bring in fish healthier and to be able to treat fish that come down with some kind of ailment or some kind of like disease or damage or something. So yeah, that's been a thing. Fish are hard. Like Elliot from Marine Collectors charges an absolute fortune for the fish that he sells, but I'm realizing very quickly it is not fish that he's selling at all. Like it sounds crazy to be like, oh well, yeah, a copper band butterfly is like $600. It ain't. You're not really paying for a copper band. You're paying for the 2 weeks of labor that he's putting into that copper band. Um, because you can absolutely 100% do this yourself. He tells you how. Like, for example, for green chromis, like I wanted him to like do some quarantining of green chromis for me, and apparently green chromis are horrible to deal with on the quarantine end. Like you see them, they're so common. You think that there's green chromis. Yeah, apparently like 999 out of 1,000 die. Like it's not good. It's like one of those things that they're so poorly handled that they shouldn't even be collected. That's how disastrously they are. And so he charges $150 per green chromis. And on top of that, lately, he's been saying no to any request involving green chromis. But he will be happy to tell you how to do it. And when you really break down what it takes to do this at his level, you're like, at least not maybe not you, but I'm like, damn, I don't want to do any of that. Like at all. Like all of that sounds terrible. Like that's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. A lot of steps. And I'm like, can we just do it easier? And he's like, well, you can do it differently, but it might not be effective. Huh, that's new. I didn't realize that this thing. So YouTube is messing with you. Okay, hold on. Let me just hit this button real quick. Skip ads. Okay. Yeah, it's really weird. Okay, that's my little rant about fish. Here's my rant about YouTube. They started playing ads during live streams, and don't know what's up with that. The other thing is, we for the past couple of these shows, I've been trying to do a 4K stream. I'm sending a 4K bitrate and a 4K file. I don't know if that's getting processed to 4K. I had found out that there is like a stream setting where you can where it's like if you don't have the stream latency option selected properly, it won't do 4K. So I was thinking, oh, maybe that was it. But no, I have it on the correct latency setting, which by the way has no mention of 4K at all. Um, I don't know, guys. I don't know. What is what is the highest resolution that you guys are able to see like right now? I'm kind of curious on your end. Like, are you seeing like a 1080p 60? Are you seeing like a 1440p 60? Are you seeing a full 4K 21 something? Help me out. 1080p 60 is max. Lame. I am not, I am sending a full 4K 60 stream to you guys, or at least up to YouTube. I thought you could only stream in 1080, but the saved recording will have the 4K playback. I don't know, bro, because like, it, again, this is all subject to change. So if somebody watches this like 5 years in the future and be like, duh, of course 4K is available. Dude, YouTube changes all the time. The fact that it's only showing 1080p 60 is infuriating. Anyway, playback will be 4K? Okay, I don't want to tell you to go off of this video, but if I went, I'm gonna check myself real quick. If I went and looked up my since this is May, so the April 2024 live stream. Will this have a 4K option? In the past, it did not. April, okay. It does not. No. In fact, it looks ridiculously potato. It's not even like it's like a 1080p stream. It's like a 1080p potato stream. YouTube, you are letting me down, man. You're making my products look like potato corals. What even is this? If I wish you could see what's actually on my screen. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. That's wild. Because I went back and I'm looking now at the live stream from like February. It looks like 10 times better. That's weird. Why is it doing that? YouTube, why are you so weird? That's crazy. Yeah, the February 2023 live show, which is a 1080p me sending at 1080 versus the April 2024 stream is not the same quality, guys. And just out of curiosity, I'm gonna look at the April 2020 live stream. Even that looks like crazy sharp. Like pandemic era. My hair is considerably darker then too. But yeah, wow. That's super interesting, guys. Anyway, whatevs. I try my best. YouTube. The heck? Okay. Other comments. Did you know that neon green and teal trumpets are actually astereosimilia? Yes, they are different. Interesting. Sounds like the bitrate too low. So I am sending the highest bitrate that I'm able to. So in my broadcast software, the highest bitrate is about 20 um, megabits per second, which is what is more than what is necessary for 4K 60. Here, hold on. Let me just open this thing up real quick. Okay, so it said in this little tooltip, the stream's current bitrate is higher than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that you use the bitrate of 6.8. Okay, so this thing does not know that I'm trying to send it 4K. And I don't know how to like find where it even wants to do that other than this like stealth interaction thingy where it's talking about stream latency. Guys, I don't know. I googled it. It seems like you have to pay for the YouTube thing to be eligible to watch anything in 4K. They put high resolution live stream behind a paywall on the viewer end. 4K is hidden for people who don't pay. Y'all. Ah. 4K is behind a paywall. And in addition, they've potatoed 1080p. YouTube. What's up? Why you like this? You used to be cool, YouTube. Link. What broadcast software are you using? I'm a YouTuber and only stream 1080p as you need over 100 megabits per second to upload 4K. I am using Wirecast, Wirecast Pro. And the 4K 60 stream for YouTube requires, I believe, 30 megabits per second. My internet tops out at about 40 up. Because I don't have like fiber here. We have like gig, but gig means like maximum gig download, but only like 30 to 40 up. So I want to make sure that like I'm still able to stream at this higher bit rate, but apparently no matter what I'm sending, YouTube is like putting it through their not very good filter. Rolando's like, I pay for YouTube, but it's not showing the 4K option. Yeah, guys, I don't know. Yeah, so this is like one of those things where I need to like crowdsource this solution because maybe it's like something on the user. Maybe it's me. Like, am I not telling it properly to like be 4K? I thought I was. I mean, I'll dibble dabble with this later on my own time. I don't need to like mess with it completely, but I'm definitely I'm definitely using a 4K, um, not a template, but like a canvas. I'm definitely broadcasting with 4K settings. Just out of curiosity, I'll take a look. Yeah, I'm certainly using the Ultra HD 3840 by 2160. So the fact that you're seeing the entire screen on the live stream means that that is doing its thing. Okay. The encoding is correct. YouTube 4K 2160 at 60 frames per second. Destination is YouTube, blah, 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 blah. I'm blaming YouTube. It is not me. Yeah, you're right. The 1080p quality seems up. It looks bad. It looks like bad. Like it's so pixelated. That's what's weird, you know? Yeah, and it's definitely so to put it into perspective, um, for years, the highest bit rate that I would send would be about 6 megabits per second. I'm sending 21 right now, and it's looking the worst it's ever looked. And I'm on, yes, I am on so Buffet, I am on normal latency because that was one thing that I had looked up. Um, I looked up the whole like because like low latency is more potato and ultra low latency is even more potato from what I understand. Definitely YouTube's fault. You're perfect. Not really, but I'm more perfect than YouTube today. That's for sure. Reef King, some nice corals. Thank you. Like I was saying before, the vast majority, 99 plus percent, are doing so well. And I am just so preoccupied with like the 1% that are not doing well, which is at some point kind of unrealistic because they're all so different from one another and they're kept in relatively similar conditions. And that's never going to be a great thing because like a lot of the corals have to adapt down to whatever that medium everything is. And so certain corals that really did require kind of like these fringe conditions simply might not like what's going on. So I mean I should be happy with the number of corals that are doing well because I mean if any of you guys came here and actually saw the place in person, you wouldn't really be stressing about coral health. But me kind of like being here all the time, I notice the outliers more than I notice the everything is fine corals. I don't pay any attention to those. Are you set to optimize latency for quality? It has to be a quality, not low or normal, I believe, Dan. Okay, so my stream latency options are normal latency, low latency, and ultra low latency. And I had heard that the low and ultra low are worse. Fact check me on that. And that is in the YouTube interface. Diacanthus Reef, late to the party, but I like that shirt. So if you guys missed the shirt tirade earlier, so I've been testing out t-shirt brands to make like a Tidal Gardens like printed shirt for the staff mainly, and maybe to sell later on. But I was never happy with like the regular t-shirt stuff. So I was trying to like dig around to find like the highest quality t-shirt imaginable. And long story short, I came across a brand called American Giant. And their stuff is like all made in America. They source their cotton, and it's all 100% cotton, no polyester or anything like that. And it's all sourced from American cotton farms. And I was about to say plantations, but I guess that's a little bit of a loaded thing when you're talking about like American agriculture. Anyway, I was curious to see like how much better that could possibly be because the shirts were substantially more expensive than like all the other ones. And it turns out that they're really nice. They're really nice. And I like those other ones just fine, some of the higher end ones. But this shirt in particular, I just started to branch out into like their button ups and stuff like that. This shirt, if you guys could like see it in person and feel it, it's crazy how nice it is. Like it feels like suit material, like in its weight. So when you pick it up, it doesn't feel like, oh, that's just like a t-shirt or like a light shirt. It feels like heavy. And yeah, so far I'm liking it. That's why I'm like so casual today because I'm still like I'm still doing auditions for shirts. So just so you know, if you look up American Giant, okay, like real quick on your own time, to obviously buy my coral, but uh, an American Giant T-shirt is like some of them are like $100 for a T-shirt, and that's before I print anything on them. So clearly, it's like a super duper outlier. Maybe if I'm drowning in cash or something, I might get some for my staff or something. But they're like crazy expensive. But I was curious to see what these shirts are really like, and what a difference um, like American cotton is from any other. So that's the story of this. His pajamas are more formal than my everyday clothes. Funny you mention that. I have literally worn this to sleep many a time. Slade Starfire. What's a camera to look out for? What do you mean? Expand upon that. Because the my canned answer is most cameras these days are going to be more than good enough. Most cameras are going to be for reefing. Okay, couple things. Um, Most cameras are going to do a pretty bad job with your home aquarium. It just is what it is. Um, you want the one that is going to do color the best. I happen to be in the camp of Canon having some of the best color science available to the consumer. I like it better than Sony. I like it better than all these other companies. Fujifilm does a really good job with color too, but I am a Canon stan over here. Okay, they do really really well with color. You might also, whatever lens you end up going with, you might also want to get the correct sized filter for it. So the orange filter, write this down, you guys. It is an 85B orange filter. And so whatever lens you're using, the thread size is what you want to get it for. Like we have every single thread size here, but these filters are like I don't know, $75 to $100 a piece. Just get the one that you need for the lens that you use the most. So if your particular lens, let's say, is like a 72 millimeter, just buy the 72 millimeter Tiffin 85B orange filter, and that will get you most of the way there with a lot of your reef aquarium photography. I personally don't love orange filters. I think it's like a heavy-handed crutch, but a lot of cameras need that crutch. They just handle the blues so poorly. But somewhere between a camera that does good color science, like a Canon or a Fuji, and also like a filter of some sort, that bridges the gap to give you like the biggest chance for success. But a lot of this also just comes down to like personal skill. Because, for example, like Michael Vargas, who takes wonderful photos, he shoots with a Nikon, and that's just like how he learned. That's what he stuck with. Great photographer. Sagi, Tech Gear Talk. He knows a lot about cameras, and he has switched over from Canon to Sony, and he's making it work. Granted, he's not shooting Reef Aquarium stuff, but he definitely makes it work. You should do some scuba diving vlogs. Well, I don't scuba dive much these days, so there's that. It's been many years. Also, you shouldn't listen to me about scuba diving. Like, I'm barely certified, and I tell the people that are taking me out, it's like, you treat me like I'm a regular tourist, because that's basically what I am. Like, yeah, sure, I'm certified, and this particular trip requires like to be like certified, PADI or whatever. No, you just go ahead and assume that I might just get myself killed on this, and you just, look out, because it's been a while for your boy here. Not for reefing, but I have an Olympus TG7. Olympus makes some pretty decent cameras too. Reef King, how long have you been into reefing? Like 30 something years. Been forever. I've been doing this so long. I've seen so many things. All the different fads and trends and the dramas. It's all gotten kind of old hat. However, it has been a little shot in the arm that I started to do this little freshwater tank, because I literally forgot what it felt like to be a beginner at all. And when I started this freshwater thing, like, everything suddenly was new. Like, I haven't had a freshwater tank in 20 something years. So it was really kind of nice, because I bought these snails, for example. And the first day they were just like all on their back. And I was like, huh, you guys okay? Like, just kind of like poking and like, is this normal? Do you guys, is this just what you do the first day? So yeah, so that whole thing has been like this huge learning experience. Like, all the plants, like all these freshwater people, they're just rattling off scientific names of plants, and it's like, that must be what it sounds like when these coral people are just talking nonstop about Acropora, Montipora, like Pseudocoronactis, Spongotes, like all it's like all of it just went over my head, right? It's I don't know if they're talking about fish. I don't know if they're talking about shrimp. I don't know if they're talking about snails. Don't know if they're talking about plants. I'm like, that's interesting. The other thing is, I don't know. Like, I have no taste, so I don't know what makes a particular freshwater tank attractive, or what design things to like avoid. I mean, I know that like if you have like a bubbling chest or like a shipwreck in your freshwater tank, that's not a great look. But if you actually try to do like an aquascape seriously in freshwater, like there are some definite design faux pas, and I don't know any of them. So I was talking to like a YouTuber. I think I was talking to. He has a big YouTube channel on the freshwater side. His name is MD Aquatics. He's like from the UK, and he was, yeah, because he was like super new to like the saltwater thing, and he had bought some anemones and or some corals or something, and he didn't realize that they were even like animals. He thought that they were just like plants. Like that level of ignorance, like my ignorance about like everything freshwater apparently. But he was like saying like, yeah, like freshwater guys, they try to make their selection of plants as green as possible. Like, they think it's like a noob move to have like a lot of reds and greens together. And I'm like, fascinating, because I was literally thinking that my little dinky freshwater tank could use some red plants. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Since birth, you don't look like you're even in your late 30s. And yeah, he acts like he's younger than later 30s too. I do act like I'm young. I have to say that I could probably speak to your 13-year-old child better than you can, just because I'm more familiar with that lingo. Like, I know what skibbity means. Like, unironically know what that means. Okay, yes, MD Fish Tank. There's very few ranked aquascapers with red plants. Weird, isn't it, you guys? Like, here in the reef aquarium hobby, we have tried to avoid. Maybe okay, I take that back. There is a stigma that brown and green is more common in corals. So people have been looking out more for stuff that's like orange or red, yellow, blue, that sort of thing, right? And so it is interesting on the freshwater side where like green is the gold standard and any deviation from green, you have to really know what you're doing to go do that stuff. And there might be a time and place for like a red plant. But if you do it wrong, that is akin to you having like a bubbling chest or like the little scuba diver guy that's going up, bobbing up and down in the bubbles. Like you're putting on a clown show for everybody right about now, like that sort of thing. Fascinating, and again, that kind of just goes back to my lack of familiarity with the whole scene because I could pick apart aesthetically any reef aquarium. I mean, to like the to shocking detail, right? But the freshwater side, I have nothing. I have no taste whatsoever. And not that it matters what anybody else thinks about my tank, right? That's to be said. This is your hobby. You enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. But I find a lot of satisfaction in kind of like knowing what the baseline rules are in design. And then if I choose to break the rules, it is from a place of understanding, not complete ignorance. And not just because, well, I happen to like it. Well, that's great. That's great for you. But you're putting on a clown show for everybody else. And there's a thing. Okay, so I'll put this analogy to you in like clothing terms. So, a lot of elements of classic style, like like suits, ties, dress shirts, tuxedos, all of that stuff, and dress shoes, okay, and color schemes and pattern and stuff like that that are associated with that. There's a lot of like what seems to be like restrictive guidelines, okay, and a lot of people that feel very individualistic don't tend to like that. They want to be like highly expressive. They want to wear like neon bandanas with their tuxedos and stuff like that, right? A lot of like red carpet fashion is extremely whack if you're looking at it from like a classical sense. But when you learn those restrictive rules, you can kind of see why it works. Oh, over time, it's like, oh, I get it. Okay, these rules are in place for a reason. These tried and tested aesthetic things work. Now, there are people like Tom Ford. He kind of knows a lot about fashion, right? Um, there's many times where he absolutely is breaking these conventions, but it is done from such a place of understanding, and it is so calculated that it also still works. Just the fact that he wears a black suit everywhere that he's seen in public, like black as far as like a suit goes, is extraordinarily difficult to pull off. It is basically appropriate for like funerals and maybe weddings, okay, but mainly funerals. And so for you to always show up in a black suit to these things, to these functions, you really have to know what you're doing. And that sort of thing, I think, applies to apparently like the highest ends of freshwater aquascaping competitions. And I want to be savvy like that so that when I am deviating from the path, I'm doing it with a very focused idea in mind. Anyway, my grandma always told me growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. That's funny. Let's see. Dennis Wong is ranked with red. He's considered one of the best, though, so it can be done well. Exactly, right? So that would be like the black suit of like the fashion world. You can do it. It's just difficult. Most corals in the ocean look brown. Put a blue light on it, it'll look different. Sure, some of them though, Reef King, are just brown. Like they're you can no amount of actinic is gonna make that thing not brown. They're just brown. Yup. Okay, what number are we on? 222. Coming really close to the end, you guys. So, real quick, thank you for all of those that came and hung out with me. It's always fun. We will be running this back in about 2 weeks with a new batch of corals, and hopefully you guys can see and pick through some of those as well. Like I said, next week I'm going to be going to Charlotte for the Aquatic Expo, hanging out with Brandy and her club, and apparently a lot of other people because I have some idea of what the ticket sales are, and it's not a small conference. Like I had expectations that it was going to be like smaller because I'm used to going to like the bigger shows. The number of like I guess like the paid ticket people is gigantic. Like that's a big show, not including anybody else that just shows up and wants to buy a ticket. Like it's a big show. So yeah, I guess I'll be wandering the show floor. If anybody else is coming and wants to say hello, feel free if I'm up and about. Um, and then the week after, we will do another one of these on a Sunday. We can hang out, talk some coral again. What else? Hopefully, yeah, we'll be getting some other videos done here. I've got some podcasts in the works. Some podcasts are getting edited. We've got two more with Elliot that are in need of editing. Becca, looking at you. Um, but yeah, hopefully soon we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about. People are super excited to have something in the area. Minimum 3,500 people. Currently going to be way more than that though. That's a lot of people. Like a big show in this area is like 1,000. And I think that it's only like 1,000, not because that's all that they could draw, but it's kind of just the size and scale of the thing. It's more of like a frag swap than it is a trade show. So you don't have like, big brand booths show up. It's all just sellers, and it's not like, like Aperture Pet and Life is not going to show up here. Like Seche is not going to set up a booth here. Like just any of the tank manufacturers, they're not. It's not a trade show. And people were like, "You should put on a trade show," and I'm like, "That doesn't sound like something I would like to do." But I think that this region is like the untapped potential of like Arrakis, where like you think that there's only like a handful of reef aquarists, but there's like a million of them or something, all in this area. Because believe it or not, there's like a dozen reef or saltwater aquarium stores within within an hour of here. I was about to say a mile, but there's literally another store within a mile of this location. Like that's how many there are. And I'm not talking even like about a PetSmart. Like there is another one that is walking distance from here. Um, but yeah, within an hour, you could easily find at over a dozen saltwater places. And if you go like a little bit past an hour, there's going to be like that many more. There's so many. It's such a hotbed for this sort of activity, but there is no signature show. I mean, so there's a couple like smaller, a lot smaller shows and clubs that are trying to do stuff. but like nothing like an Aquashala. There's nothing like a Reefapalooza. Like I mean, those are obviously like bigger national shows, but again, there's like nothing like that here. So it would be interesting to do something just out of like a curiosity to see how many people would really show up. Because I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more than what people think. And what is nice about this place is what it lacks in certain amenities. It is probably affordable to put on a big show. I think that where a lot of show organizers tend to struggle, like this is my thinking. It's like I would, if I were to ever do a show, I would do it in Las Vegas. But then when you look at the numbers that you have to like pay to do anything on like the Vegas Strip, it's like impossible to make your money back. Like it's impossible to even get on the calendar. Um, it turns out that a lot of places were able to do some of the venues that they did because of the COVID thing. Because like these hotels just couldn't fill up. But now that like we're kind of like living in a post-COVID world, it turns out that like the insurance companies of America want to book that same place, and like hotels like get out of here, reef nerds. We're about to make 8 times that money now. We're gonna sell out this entire complex. Anyway, guys, that pretty much does it for me. Thank you all for hanging out. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I'll see you all next time in 2 weeks, no less. All right. Bye now.